Hello, my name is Erica Mercer, and today we are going to talk about my final presentation. This final presentation is for English 135, Greek, and Roman literature. And basically, it just goes over everything that has got me to this point. So I'm going to go ahead and start with my final journal submission. And as you can see, phew, um, that was a lot of writing, a lot of note taking, and of course, it included my short responses and assignments, activities, um, and and then my checklist, which was very helpful to ensure that I had everything that I needed when I was supposed to have it done. So that was really good. My final journal submission, I mean, like I said, it was a lot. Um, there was a lot of writing that happened there to get me to this point, and I am extremely glad that I was able to complete it and get it turned in. Making changes and things to that writing was probably hardest for me because um, I guess anybody, it's just hard. It's hard to have to like it's you want to grow and you want to learn new techniques and you want to learn new skills, especially with writing. But um, sometimes it can be hard because you have like your own kind of style that you're used to writing in, and it's hard to, I guess, maybe take criticism there. So that was probably the hardest part about the class was um, having to make changes to things that I liked, you know, that you would make, say that needed changes. So that was one thing. So the next thing I'm talking about is short responses, and the short responses were pretty good. A lot of times it made me take deeper dives into um, what I was reading or listening to or learning at the time or that week for that week because if I'm being honest, I have to admit that a lot of the reading, especially the poetic lines and things verses, just were I like poetry, but some of it just seemed like it was um like it was just like so overdone and not in a bad way, just personally, it just seemed like they were using a thousand words to say one simple thing, and it was hard sometimes to like follow that. You're like, okay, I get it. But it was sometimes it was hard to like push through that. Sometimes it was hard to push through some of the readings where it seemed like these chapters went like on and on, and um some of those were hard. But the short responses really forced me to like take a deeper dive and to like go back and make comparisons between text, or make comparisons between maybe a play that we watched um, and the actual script for that play. And so in that way, it really helped me to make deeper connections to those things, those readings that I just wasn't naturally into. So that was good. The next thing that we're going to talk about is the notes. Tons and tons of notes. And I would have to say that in the beginning, that wasn't like I wasn't very excited. I personally like writing things by hand. I don't really like to type things, um, unless I have to. I really do just enjoy writing things with by hand. So I thought at first that the notes would be fun, but I have to admit that they just weren't always fun. Um, a lot of times the the notes kind of hindered me being able to get into a reading or immerse myself in a play because I was having to always remember to be actively taking notes on those things. And that way it was like I was always having a distraction. But I will say at the end of the day, the taking those active reading notes helped me in so many ways. It made um, it made forming my short responses, doing my assignments and activities, um, um, writing my final paper, um, and even doing this presentation. It made it so much easier because not only was it organized and it kept me on track and it gave me that the ability to go back when I'm answering these questions at the end of the week, to go back and be like, where did I read that at? Okay, here it is. Or what happened after that? Okay, here it is. But it also just, I think, really helped me to retain what I was reading and listening to and learning, just longer than it would have if I would have just read it or watched it the one time. I think having to stop and write those things down, just really helped me to just keep it, um, and learn it and be able to apply it later. Um, Another thing that I really liked about the notes was that when, like, generally if I'm reading something or watching something and I don't understand a word, um, then I can make inferences as I continue reading. But sometimes those things just still like you still don't know what that word means. You just move on. And when I was taking the notes, when I came across words that I didn't know, I was able to write them down and immediately look for up the definition. And that was incredibly helpful. I really enjoyed learning what these words were, or what it meant. Most of it was something to have having to do with Greek culture, whether it be plants or food or just the way a building was shaped, or anything like that, or it's just this architecture, that kind of thing that really did help me to have a better grasp of what was going on and who these people were and what they were doing, and just obtaining that knowledge was fun too. Up next, we're going to talk about my final paper. So, my final paper. Um, not because it wasn't because I didn't want to write this final paper, and it wasn't because I was just being lazy about it or procrastinating, but it did take me a little longer to get started on this final paper, mainly because I felt pretty intimidated because I wasn't really sure what I wanted to write it about. Um, it took me a little longer to figure out what piece I really wanted to look further into. And I finally landed on Metamorphosis by Ovid and I think one of the reasons I really like Metamorphosis by Ovid is because it's kind of laid out and it's simple, like The Myths of Greece and Rome by H.A. Gerber. It has, I kind of feel like Ovid's being pretty cynical throughout it, and I think it's funny, but I really like how he kind of lays out the myth and what's going on, and then under it he has like this commentary about what he's talking about and what they're talking about, and just this explanation at the end that is just incredibly helpful. It made reading it a lot of fun, and it did seem like there was quite a bit of cynicism going on, which I thought was quite funny. So I decided to do Metamorphosis by Ovid, and for my research, I mainly went to the library several different times. Um, I used a lot of resources from the library just really to get me started, and it helped me choose what my argument was or what my approach was going to be. Um, of course, I had Metamorphosis by Ovid, the reading that you provided. I also was able to make some connections and pull some things from The Myths of Greece and Rome by H.A. Gerber. But all of my peer-reviewed research papers that I used for citations and sources were I pulled from EBSCOhost. I know that that's available through JCTC, but I did use the library's website for that because I was in the library. I was using both their computer and my Chromebook and their reading materials, going back and forth, and so it just made it easier in that way. But I was really excited to find kind of exactly what I needed through EBSCO and I was able to meet all of my requirements for my citations or sources as well. Um, so that was good. My argument that I made was that although it's called metamorphosis, and that's probably, I mean, of course, that means, transformations and changes. There were lots of transformations and changes that happened to people, to gods, to um, places and things. And while that is a big part of that his writings, of course, I wanted to look at a different aspect. I wanted to look at um, fate and free will. I think that most of his writings have to do with fate and free will, and I really think that Ovid was questioning what that relationship was. Were there these gods that were controlling things, and this higher power that was controlling things, and making things easy or difficult for people? How much power did people actually have? Um, and just how these things affected each other. And so my approach was I thought that maybe um, if I could see if there were any other modern authors who wrote or who were inspired by Ovid, who wrote um, things more like from these days, more modern authors who wrote things that were inspired by Ovid and that had been researched and it was well noted that they were inspired by Ovid's writings. And if they had wrote about fate and free will, that that might show a correlation. It might show that Ovid was um, was definitely concerned with that aspect of things in his writings. And so my findings showed that there were two that I chose to really focus on, while there were others. I focused on Shakespeare and Charles Dickens. You can see the correlations made in my paper from the sources that I found that showed that there were indeed quite a bit of writings that were very similar to Ovid's style, and they were definitely both of those authors definitely wrote a lot about fate and free will in their own pieces, and research has found that they were inspired by Ovid, and I think that that shows a huge correlation between a huge argument for Ovid, um, uh, Ovid's curiosity and fixation on fate and free will. So the last thing is, how has this course helped to shape or change my understanding of Greek and Roman literature, culture, mythology? And I would have to say that I did not know before that they were so well versed in human nature and emotions and in their feelings and that they were so aware of their surroundings and what was going on around them. They had these people who had such vast knowledge about just their environment, and I mean, the way that they made stories that were so creative to come up with these gods, and that they had these control over their desires and their anger and war and the sun coming up down and the seasons changing and people who were kind of in love with themselves and just all of these stories that they created to explain every aspect of their environment and their internal and external environment. I thought that was amazing. And so, and not just that, but also I learned that their statues were not all white, that they were actually very colorful people. That was interesting. And then the other thing was that we have so much of their culture ingrained in us today in our Western civilization that we don't even, I guess, probably notice. We probably just overlook it so much, but it's there. It's all around us all the time. From our government to our art to our inspiration when we write, and in our like in our schools and our subway system, and there's just so much of it all around. So I thought that was pretty interesting to learn. Whereas before coming to this class, before having this course, I really didn't, other than reading some fables and watching some Greek and Roman literature play out on like movies, I really hadn't ever immersed myself in this part of their culture, and then so I found it very interesting. So thank you so much for putting this class together. Thank you for teaching me so much in such a short time. I really appreciate it, and Merry Christmas.